Hi folks. Right, this will be the last episode of Aegean Blue. Got over whatever bug it was I had. It was worrying because of current climate and all that, but I had a burning sensation down the middle of my chest here. A little bit of a tickly cough, no fever whatsoever. A little bit lightheaded as well, so I thought, well, fuck it, I'm going to have to self-isolate, and I did. Unfortunately, I'm kind of self-isolating in Devon. Well, I say unfortunately. It has its ups and its downs. My missus is 200 miles away. Well, actually, more than that. My missus is 3 weeks away, which might be a good thing, and it might be a bad thing. We do try and chat on the phone, be nice to each other. But yes, this will be the last episode. Now, I've done diagnosis on the root cause of the problem, because if you've seen, the engine runs. It's got all the way over there. Runs really nicely. Needs an ignition overhaul. It needs new plugs, it needs new HTDs. I might even have some second-hand ones that have come off my car that I might have hung on to that are going to be in better shape than the leads that are on it. So I might give those a go. But anyway, enjoy the video. Right, Mr. Distributor. Dead straightforward. There's no rotor on the top of this, first of all. Secondly, that's the drive gear. So that's on the bottom of the distributor. When we were having the non-start issues, one of the things that I do check is that roll pin is intact. So really, by getting hold of the rotor, you don't want to feel any kind of real play between the two. You hear the I was just double checking then that the mechanical advance was working. Right, these clips get in the way. They're a pain in the ass. You can't take them off. You have to drift the rivets out, and just don't go there. So on the top of this distributor, so because we're an electronic ignition distributor, inside here we've got kind of all the mechanism, the gubbins. It's got this cover over the top here saying do not remove this cover. This distributor is factory set and requires no adjustment or service. Well, that might have been the case 30 years ago. I'm telling you now, this thing needs a service. There's something wrong in here. Right, now inside here, what we've effectively got is we've got the pickup here. That's the pickup. There's an optical sensor there. Magnet here. You feel nice big strong magnet. Yeah, it's all magnetised. And then we've got the cables here that go round to the amplifier on the side. 2 screws there, and then that hooks onto a post on the bottom of the top plate. So we'll remove that. That's out of the way. Now what we're left with really is the base plate, and you can see here what the vacuum advance would do. It doesn't move anywhere near that much. I'm wondering if these wires here because you notice here when that vacuum advance was on the post there, look how tight these wires are up here. They've got all this slack here and they're tight up there. Right, okay. That's something to look at, isn't it? Right. So what have I found? What have I found? Right, okay. On day one, when I was trying to diagnose the original fault, it's quite bright today. Nice sunny day. Nice. On day one, this wire here, which is a black and white wire which goes from the coil back to the ECU, was a dodgy connection. In fact, it fell apart when I touched it. So the ECU wouldn't have been potentially receiving a reliable signal from the coil that the engine was running, and therefore the fuel pump wouldn't have engaged. So this is kind of where my theory that 99% of fuel related issues are ignition and 99% of ignition related issues are fuel. Think about it. Right, so on the original issue, we messed around. We found, what I found, the vacuum advance was dead. So while the distributor was going to come out, I might as well replace that anyway. I also detected a very, very weak spark. Now, this is the ignition module that came off the car's original distributor that was displaying the very, very weak spark. I'll come back to this in a minute. It's important. Pay attention. I learned an awful lot, really, about the way that this LPG setup is installed. So typically on one of these Rover V8s, certainly anything with a 14 CUX, ECU, ECM, ECU, whatever you want to call it, engine management system, ECS. Typically what happens is you end up with distinct circuits. So start and charge is completely unrelated to it, but it feeds into it. Ignition is completely unrelated to it, but it feeds into it. All of the 14 CUX actually does is detects that the engine is turning via a trigger from the coil. It then opens up the earth to the fuel circuit, which goes through here, which goes through and pumps fuel in. So we did have a problem with the fuel pressure. We certainly had a problem with the fuel pressure regulator, because it wasn't regulating the pressure in the fuel rail, which wouldn't have helped. It would have lost a fair few horses running on petrol. And we also had a problem with the filter inside the pump, that once it got to pressure it wasn't able to maintain it because the filter was so bunged up it couldn't draw the fuel in quickly enough. So we had all those little issues. My fuel test rig would have helped me get to that conclusion an awful lot quicker. That was my time, not the customer's time. So no harm done there, apart from the fact the car is now isolated in Devon, unfortunately. For at least another 2.5 weeks we'll find out what Boris says. Right, so on day one we managed to get the car started by messing around with the ignition amplifier and messing around with the trigger wire, but also then without doing too much to the fuel system, the car did start, but I did recognise that there was a problem with the pressure regulator. So that fixed, and then the car ran beautifully while I was doing all the other work, fixing the heater, doing this, that and the other, getting this car sorted out in general, getting it MOT'd. And then, as you saw in second to last episode, I can't remember which one it was now, it broke down at the bloody MOT test station. And it was displaying the same symptoms as it displayed on day one, cranking over and 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 over, and eventually we just go cough over and 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 over, and then it would cough. And no, it didn't have COVID-19. So I thought, well, this is bloody weird, this is. So is it fuel related? So this is kind of where I discovered the filter issue on the pump. So I was taking the plug zone out. So because we've got new catalytic converters on this thing, it's crazy to crank this thing over for hours on end. I mean, you can overheat the starter motor. All you're really doing is you're putting fuel into the cylinders, which is not igniting, which is going to end up in the exhaust, which is going to damage the catalytic converter. So after about 20 seconds or so of cranking, stop cranking, take all the plugs out, let the thing dry itself through, put the plugs back in again, try it again, and it became a very laborious process of trying to get this thing to behave itself. And this is kind of where I got to the point of pulling the fuel tank off. This is where my 99% of ignition related problems are related, and vice versa. Pulled the fuel tank off and found obvious fault in fuel tank, bunged up filter, you've seen it. The thing was rock solid. In fact, I might have even left it in the car here. It's a small gift which I might even enclose in resin. Look at that little paperweight. Let's drop that down there. So yes, there was a problem with that. To put it all back together again, buoyed with hope, got in, cranked the engine over, wound over and 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 over. I'm getting sick to death of this by now. Right, again, all my time this. So then I started going through, well, I had already been through there's a series of ECU test procedures that you can go through. They're all part of the Land Rover workshop manual. They're not detailed in the Haynes workshop manual. You get a Land Rover workshop manual. I've got an online, so I've got an electronic version of it which I bought, but it's very, very useful. And there's a series of checks that you can go through. Engine's not starting, and they're just checks with a multimeter that you can do on the ECU. I got all the way down to the one where I was checking that the ECU was receiving a trigger from here, from the coil on the black and white wire. And I couldn't really check it because a multimeter is not going to be quick enough in order to pick up that signal. So the engine's rotating at, I don't know, 150 RPM. And you're not going to be able to get that coming across quickly. Your multimeter just will not be able to respond quickly enough to pick up that that signal. And this is kind of where I got into. Right, let's think outside the box. I've got one of the original diagnostic kits, so the diagnostic plug-in that you just the 2 digits to establish, gives you the engine code and so forth. But then a bit of research around, I found Rover Gauge, all fantastic, bit of freeware software, buy a cable, plug it into the diagnostic port, the loop-back diagnostic port. I will do a review on this, and amongst other things, it does tell you what the RPM of the engine is. Great, let's plug it in, put the laptop in the car, let's crank the engine over, and sure enough, the ECU is detecting that the engine's cranking over 150 something RPM. So, ignition's working. Bloody hell, what can it be now? So then we check the spark. Now I'm going to set up again in a second. So I've got the original amplifier on here. So we'll repeat some of the tests that I did. I'm not taking this distributor out again at the moment. This is the original distributor for the customer's car in here, with its new vacuum fans. But that's the new ignition amplifier, and I'll go through this in a second. All these HG leads are a bit suspect, but no reason why it wouldn't start. And we went through all this phase of not understanding what the emulators were doing, because I haven't got the diagnostic cable for plugging into this OMVL millennium brain. That was a Freudian slip, wasn't it? So I ended up taking the plenum off, removing the whole of the LPG emulator loop, and just plugging the connector straight into, plugging the ECU directly into the injectors. Let's make this circuit as simple as we possibly can. Again, all my time. None of this was paid for by the customer. And part of it is, I guess, if I can understand what caused this problem, it's going to help me moving forwards. Certainly with diagnosing, this problem is going to be something that I don't know, or it's going to be extremely bizarre. Extremely. So this is kind of why I was getting more and more perplexed by it. Right, so spark. When you're testing a spark, the book says the spark needs to jump 6 mil. And originally, as you saw in the manual, I just took the king lead off the top of the distributor, and I wedged a bolt in it and I rested it, and it was about 6 mil off the top of the plenum. I even created another engine earth using a jump lead across the battery negative, just in case the earth, you can see I've cleaned up the earth down here, cleaned some of the paint away, and made a new earth for the coil, and the engine earth, that's the engine earth there, one of the engine earths. So I wanted to make sure that it had a good circuit, and I was getting a spark of 6 mil, reasonable enough, more and more baffled. So then I thought, right, this is getting silly now. So I then bought because all my stuff is 200 miles away in High Wycombe, and I'm isolated and locked down. So the next thing I did was I got like a spark test, and let me show you the spark test. There you go, spark test. These things are about £5 or £10 or whatever. I can't remember how much I paid for this one, but it's ever so easy because you can adjust the gap between the 2 contacts in here. Focus, you bastard. You see the 2 contacts in here. If I touch the screen, it'll focus on you. Oh, it's on autofocus. Stupid thing. Right, okay. So you can see the 2 contacts in there. And the idea is you earth this to the engine. So here, there's a handy earth up here on the edge of the plenum. Nice bolt, because the crock clip on this thing is stupidly small. So all I do is I earth that up there, if I can get the bloody crock clip to work. There we are. There we are, earthed. And then you put an HG lead onto the other end of it. Now it makes sense to put the king lead on, because you're going to get 8 times the number of sparks as if you're going to put a one of the other leads, the plug leads on it. So put the king lead on the end there. And then balance it on a coolant pipe or something, so nothing is anywhere near any point where it's likely to arc out. So if you've got this near here, it's obviously going to jump across onto the plenum rather than onto the onto where it should be. So let's plug the king lead on. Boom, boom, boom. You can stay there. King lead comes off the top of the distributor that's in the car. I'm not changing the distributor that's in the car again. So here we go. So we've got the circuit set up. Very bright today, isn't it? Might not even be able to see this spark. I'm going to have to do something about shadow or shade. If I stand here like that, that's better. Right, okay, so we've got a nice big healthy, and I'm pretty sure that when I was testing this with this module, this is the brand new distributor Doctor module, when I was testing it in the car, I was getting about 1.5 centimetres of a spark. Thinking, well, if I'm getting 1.5 centimetres of spark, that's not too bad, is it? Even though the book says 0.6 mil, still no starting engine though. So by this point, I'm pulling components, key components out of this car, which shouldn't affect the starting. Should not affect the starting. The only one I found that should affect the starting is this one here, because on rover gauge, this has gone open circuit and it's detecting the throttle as 88%. So that's going to overfuel, which is why it's disconnected. There is a fail safe. So if either these or various other components around the engine, if they fail, you can just disconnect them and they go into a fail safe mode. The engine will run without the throttle position sensor. It will run without the airflow meter and without the air bypass valve at the back there with the 2 red dots on it. It will run without those. It will run without the without the fuel temp sensor or the water temp sensor. It will run without those. Because it goes into a fail-safe mode. It's a very, very simple system. Just perplexing me, that's all. So we kind of got to the point where I was running out of options. I was ticking all these things off my list of things that I needed to tick off, thinking about this thing logically, trying to work out where the root cause of this problem was, and trying all components onto my car. Tried the ECU on my car. My car starts beautifully because there's my car down there, the L95. Oh, there's a robin on the back wheel. Hello, Robin. You little bastard. Wonder what he was doing under there. I hope he's not making a nest. Right. So yes. So I was trying out components on my car. That's a bright sun, isn't it? It's a lovely day. Trying out components on my car. Tried the airflow meter, wouldn't make a difference. Tried the ignition coil on my car, made no difference. My car started. Tried the ECU. The only thing I hadn't tried was the distributor, but I tried I knew that the ignition amplifier was new. I knew that the vacuum advance was new. I knew the air gap was good. I knew it was giving a spark of 1.5 centimetres. What's wrong with the distributor, me's thinking? Reasonable assumption, would you not think? I even went through and I checked all of the fusible links, thinking, well, maybe something's got a bit high resistance and the voltage is dropping off. No. I bought another distributor off eBay. It was 60 quid. Ignore the red cross on that. I'll tell you about that in a second. I found it on eBay. I think I paid 60 quid for it. It's a 35 DLM8 Lucas distributor of the design that's used in the 3.9 V8. And it was advertised as coming from a running car. I've got no reason to disbelieve that, although it's not in the best of health. It will certainly do as a test rig. Interestingly, the vacuum advance works, but the mechanical advance doesn't. And I plugged it into the car as it came, as it arrived, plugged it into the car, put the customer's cap, rotor and everything on it, and it started straight up, first click. It didn't even say, oh, new distributor, I'm going to crank over a couple of times. First click of the engine and it fired into life. I think you might have heard my dismay. My exasperation may have come across in some profanity as to, oh, I don't believe this fucking haunted car. So, what did I do then? Right, well then, we're going to go into a bit of analysis, because I did lots of videos of it, but none of it was in the right order. And I was a bit irritated, so it got a bit kind of sweary, and I'm not going to broadcast some of the swear words that I did come out with. Right, so this distributor now is exactly as it came from eBay, except it's got the original ignition control module that came with this car on day one, which I discounted as being dead, hence the red cross. Dead because the spark wasn't strong enough. And it was because the spark wasn't strong enough that I bought, on behalf of the customer, I'm going to have to refund the customer now, a distributor Doctor ignition module. So damn windy outside. I've decided to relocate into the barn. So I made up a really, really simple test rig. You kids can do this at home too. So we've got a 12 volt car battery, a 12 volt power supply. As long as it's DC, will do exactly the same thing. All I've done is to put a red clamp on the positive terminal just so I don't fuck it up. Unnecessary swearing, Richard. Day 6 of isolation. Okay, then we got an earth. Earth goes straight to the distributor body. That's the key thing that needs to be earthed here. We've got our little test rig in here, a little jobby that tells us how big the spark is going to be. And then we've wired the negative side of the coil over here, Richard. Sound like Keith Floyd now, don't I? Up here, Richard, up here. Right. If you don't know who Keith Floyd is, I'll look it up. He's just outstanding chef. Dead now, unfortunately, but just, yeah. Anyway, not Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd are outstanding as a music band. We're digressing, Richard. Negative terminal on the coil goes through to the signal output on the ignition amplifier. And this is the one that... So this distributor... Now, let me go through the circuit first of all. Let's do one thing at a time. And then I've connected the feed, the 12-volt feed to the ignition amplifier. So we've got the wires go like that. 12-volt feed goes through to the positive side of the coil, Richard, up here. 12-volt side of the coil. And then on the other side of the 12-volt coil, I've got a blank wire, and I've just touched that onto the battery. So there's my circuit. Now, this distributor is the eBay jobby. Intact, as it came from eBay, but I've put the original ignition module that came with the car when it first arrived with its non-start fault. So let's test this first of all now. So we can see here, test rig down here. We've got the coil up here. Let's move him a little bit. We've got the battery is over there, and you can see the tail end of the distributor. So let's connect up again. You see that spark? Hopefully you can see that spark. I think you can see that spark. It's a monster. So this is the customer's original ignition amplifier in the known good distributor. Yep, that's working. Let's take it out a bit further. Let's see how far this thing can actually go. We'll go out to 2 centimetres. This might be a push. This might be a bridge too far. Oh, right. Now again. Whoops, earth's just come off. Let's just put the earth back on again. That was the earth for the adapter. Come on, get on it, you bastard. It's on there. Right, there we go. Right, can you see that? You can see that. Right, let's take... Oh, for fuck's sake, stay there, you bastard. Right, now, let's wind the... Right, sometimes it's shorting inside the coil, and sometimes it's able to, if I wind it reasonably quickly, it is dancing across that gap there. But I think it's fairly safe to say that that original ignition module is in good shape. And now if I go down to the gap it's supposed to be at, which is, I think these things are supposed to be 6 mil, so let's go down to 6 mil. This should be a monster of a spark. If I put the coil the other side of the HT lead, it will stop walking its way across the pissing bench. Can I get the... Right, okay. Let's try this. I mean, that is a hulking great big spark. There's a lot of blue to it as well. Okay, so that's the first test. Now, because of the issues with this bundle of joy and the stretched wires and so forth, I'm now going to try the second module, which was the distributor doctor module, which I bought, thinking that it was the ignition module that was dead. So let me fit that fella on now. It's fairly straightforward, just 2 screws on the side of the distributor, no witchcraft, no wizardry. Apart from all of that goes on inside these little boxes of tricks. I don't know. Okie doke. So the old module comes off, the 12-volt feed and the signal wire come off. So that's the original module. Let's put the 12-volt, sorry, let's put the signal back on. Let's put the 12-volt feed back on, and then let's meet you on to... There's no circuit at the moment, by the way, just in case you're wondering. why I'm fiddling around with all this high voltage crap. I'll just put the earth wires back on. Second clamp bolt goes back on. Right, now let's complete the circuit with the battery. I'd say that's a monster of a spark. You see it? I might have to get in really close for this. I don't know. Let's bring the camera in, because I've got to hold the camera on the tripod, you see. Let's bring the camera down. It's tricky to get the camera there. Right, okie doke. Now, hopefully you'll be able to see the spark now. Got him? Nice big, healthy, hearty, good spark. Now, let's stretch this out now. So let's go out to 1 centimetre. Which is about there. Plug the circuit back in again. Connect up to the battery. Again, hearty, good spark. And out again. So it's 1.5 centimetres. It's not exact science, but it's not far off it. Oh, it's getting stronger. Let's go out to 2. Oh, look at that. That's as strong as it was on the used old stock one that came off the customer's car. Alright, so that spark is jumping 2 centimetres. I am fairly confident that both ignition amplifiers, so the one that came off the car originally is good, and the one from Distributor Doctor is good. Sorry, Martin. I did send you an email. I'm going to drop you another email to say we found the root cause. So that is bizarre, really, isn't it? That can do that. Now let's dissect this thing, because you really have caused quite a lot of trouble. You have. Let me get set up on the tripod. So first and foremost, there's no real reason why this should have been trapped in the way it is. I can only think that because these wires are clamped in here, I mean, I can't push them through. This is a fault with the original build of this base plate. If we have a quick look at the internals of the, let me just disassemble my distributor. This is the eBay distributor that's coming up now. Oh! So here we go. Here's the internals of the eBay distributor, and you can see there's a slight bit of excess cable in there. Slight bit, but not hulking great loop like that. There's a slight kink in it, but also you can see that the other cables, they're not tight at this side. And we know that when this thing was in, you refer back earlier in this video, that when this thing was actually installed in the distributor, these wires at the top here, they were tugging, and you could see how that wire there, specifically on the top there, you could see how it started to break down. How the rubber insulation around it has started to fail. And you can see how that one there has started to pull out of the green plastic. Or green nylon, whatever this stuff is down here. So I am almost certain now that this thing was the root cause. The weak spark we had, the non-ignition, the fact that it's turning over and it's got enough of a spark to be able to tell the coil to trigger, i.e. we're getting a spark on each of the 8 cylinders. We're getting a signal back to the ECU to say, yep, the engine's turning, feel free to deliver fuel. The fuel can deliver from now. And all it was doing was flooding the engine because the spark wasn't strong enough. It's that. It was this. Because we've proven all of the other components are in rude health. Is that actually? Yeah, see? That's actually the core in there by the looks of things. actually tug it out. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching. Told you it would be a bizarre fault. So the thing passes every single test and gives a spark. And we know it's not the amplifier, we know it's not the coil, even though they're not necessarily, you know, the coil isn't necessarily the best part out. We know the ignition leads and so forth, we know all that. Root cause. Did you guess it? Did you guess it? You probably would have got an inkling about 2.5 minutes into this video. But I honestly thought that the distributor doctor module had failed because I was getting a weak spark at the beginning of the testing after the breakdown outside the MOT test station. And I thought that that component had failed. But as you've just seen, it's clearly functioning way beyond its current design brief. So I'm happy with that. I'll hang on to it, keep it in the stash. This, I don't know, maybe remake up these connectors and so forth. Fix it. Perhaps I can build up that other distributor. But I've got my test rig now. I've got my test rig now, which I'm happy with. And it's complete. And the only thing that doesn't work on it is the mechanical advance doesn't work. Oh, it's just getting looser though. I can hear it. I'll continue to lube that. But what I might do is I'm going to do a separate video on taking one of these things apart to fix the mechanical advance. Let's do that. That'll be a laugh, won't it? Anyway, thanks for watching this one. It's been an interesting one. I can't say I've enjoyed every single second of this particular project. Some of the electrical anomalies have had me very close to tearing my hair out. I'm pleased it's resolved. I'm pleased we have identified the root cause. And I'm pleased I got this as well. Bargain. So please, yeah, thumbs up, thumbs down as you wish. Comments below, especially on some of the tests that we've discussed here. Subscribe for a lot more of this stuff. Hello, car. As easy as that. That was a cold start as well.